Aliko Dangote is Africa's richest man. He's worth billions of dollars. His businesses dominate key industries in Nigeria: cement, sugar, salt, and now oil. But how did he really make his money? Was it just smart business, or was it something else? Welcome to another episode of Odd Nigeria. Before we continue, I would like to say a very big thank you to everyone tuning into these videos. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and always remember to share your thoughts in the comment section and ideas on what videos you'd like to see next. Now, in February 2025, a Forbes article was released sharing that Africa's richest man, Aliko Dangote, doubled his staggering wealth by making a gutsy bet on Nigeria's oil industry. But he's always been rich, hasn't he? Year after year, aggregates and insiders have ranked Dangote as the richest Nigerian in the world and amongst the richest men on earth. So where did all that money come from? Sure, everybody knows that the serial industrialist comes from a wealthy family history, but is that the entire story? In this episode of Odd Nigeria, we will tell you the history of Africa's richest man like you've never heard it before, and how he made every dime he's amassed over the course of his staggering career. Now, as of 2025, Dangote is now worth about $250 billion, and a huge reason for that is his latest bet on the oil industry. Now, in case you don't know, as a quick recap, the richest black man on earth established the first and only privately owned refinery in Nigeria. After a long, arduous decade and about $20 billion in investment, the refinery is finally operational and almost running at full capacity. This means that it's the 7th largest refinery in the world and the outright largest in Africa, and Dangote owns a 92.3% stake in it. The success of this investment has meant that as of March 2025, Dangote's personal fortune is now worth a staggering $23.9 billion. For context, if you made 100 million naira a day, it would take you 1,047 years to make the money that Dangote is now worth in naira. But like we said earlier, he's always been rich. So let's get some things out the way very quickly. Dangote himself has once said he built his fortune from scratch.
You came from a wealthy family or not a wealthy family?
I came from a wealthy family, but David, one thing that I'm very, very proud of is that I did not inherit any money from my father. I built everything from scratch to where I am.
That's not entirely true. And if you think Dangote's wealth comes from his family's wealth, you'll be right, kind of. But that's not entirely true either. Odd Nigeria's research found that Dangote's rise wasn't just about money, or hard work, or gut, or will. It was about timing, connections, and strategy. And the full story might surprise you. Odds are, if you're Nigerian, you've probably wondered at some point, how can I make money like Dangote? Well, you probably can, but to do that, you'd first have to be born into the Dantata family. Aliko Dangote was born in 1957 in Kano, Nigeria, into a wealthy and influential family. You see, Aliko was the great-grandson of Al-Hassan Dantata, who was the richest person in West Africa at the time of his death in 1955. His grandfather from his mother's side, Sanusi Dantata, was one of the richest men in Kano at the time and a well-known merchant in the British colonial era. In Nigeria, where access to capital can be the biggest challenge in starting a business, Dangote had an advantage: family money and connections. But one often overlooked fact about Dangote's history is the historical significance of his birth state itself. You see, Kano has been the economic nerve center of northern Nigeria and sub-Saharan Africa for many generations. Many large markets exist within Kano today, and many of them specialize in specific products like textiles or grain. To date, the slogan of Kano State is Center of Commerce. But we'll probably talk more about Kano State and its history in a different episode. After completing his studies in business at Al-Azhar University, an Islamic institution in Cairo, Egypt, Dangote returned to Nigeria in 1977. Despite the history of Kano's trade and his family's success in the state, Dangote made a move to Lagos, Nigeria to start a business. He was just around 20 years old at the time. As the story goes, Dangote asked his uncle for a loan to start a business shortly after moving to Lagos. How much was the loan, you may ask? Well, some sources say the loan was about $3,000. However, others say it was more like $500,000. This was a lot of money. In today's rate, $500,000 is the equivalent of about 4 billion naira. Now we can end the video here and say this sums it up. After all, if I had access to a loan of 4 billion naira at the age of 20, I too would become Dangote, right? But is that entirely true? We all can think about at least one example of somebody in society, either on social media or maybe even in real life, who has access to such levels of wealth and had that from an early age. But they aren't all billionaires in their own rights, and if they are, they definitely aren't Aliko Dangote. So clearly it's not just about the money. Still, $500,000 is an insane amount of money that most Nigerians can only dream of getting as startup capital. But credit where credit is due, Dangote didn't waste the opportunity. But you see, he had always been entrepreneurial from an early age. His father died when he was just 8 years old, so he spent more time with his grandfather. To date, the billionaire credits most of his success to his maternal grandfather, who instilled a business mindset into him at a very young age. He took advantage of Nigeria's booming demand for rice, sugar, and cement and built a profitable trading business. In fact, according to an interview he gave many years ago, he made so much money from selling rice to local traders at a marked up rate that he paid his uncle's loan back to him in 3 months. In 1981, the Dangote Group was launched, but then he made a move that changed the game. He stopped importing and started producing. This was a strategic shift and it put him in a position of power. Why? Because Nigeria at the time depended heavily on imports for basic goods. And if you controlled production, you controlled the market. And the Nigerian government was willing to protect local manufacturers. So in 1999, Dangote shifted to manufacturing, building sugar refineries and a flour mill. When Dangote Sugar first debuted on the Nigerian Stock Exchange in 2010, sales had quadrupled to about $450 million, according to Forbes, making it the largest sugar refinery in Africa and by some estimates the second largest in the world. Similarly, Dangote Flour tripled revenue to about $270 million. But you may be wondering, why did Dangote shift from importing to production? You see, Dangote's philosophy is known as backwards integration. Backward integration is when a company acquires its own raw materials or component suppliers. In Nigeria, it means import substitution. It encourages Nigerians to make their own materials instead of using foreign supplies and equipment. But now things are about to get a bit dicey. You see, Dangote can be praised for realizing a gap in the market, yes. But Dangote also benefited from policies that restricted imports of goods that he was producing, which included cement, sugar, and flour. These restrictions made it harder for competitors to bring in cheaper alternatives. And who benefited from that? Dangote. Now here's where things start to get really interesting. Dangote's companies became dominant in their industries to the point that they controlled most of the market. Let's take cement for example. In the early 2000s, Nigeria needed cement for its construction boom. The government introduced policies that made it almost impossible to import cement unless you were producing it locally. And who was the biggest local producer? Dangote Cement. All Nigeria found that by 2021, Dangote Cement controlled more than 60% of Nigeria's cement market. This means that if you wanted cement, you were likely buying from Dangote. That's not just success, that's control. But it doesn't stop there. Dangote also received billions in government incentives, tax breaks, and favorable policies over the years. Again, not illegal, but it raises questions. At some point, Dangote held exclusive import rights to sugar, cement, and rice, meaning he was the only person in the country at the time who could import without limitation. Hence, he could afford to underprice his products compared to his competitors and then make the money back through volume sale. Dangote is also known to be politically astute. He has carefully navigated his way through changing governments and regulations, emerging unscathed with bigger profits every time. He specifically had a great relationship with former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo. Dangote funded Obasanjo's 1999 and 2003 election campaigns, and Obasanjo returned the favor by introducing restrictions on imported cement in 2001, among other items. So it's no coincidence that Dangote became Nigeria's first dollar billionaire in 2007, the last year of Obasanjo's 2-term tenure as Nigeria's president. And this isn't just speculative. In a cable released by WikiLeaks in 2010, a former US Consul General shared the following. Dangote is counted among President Obasanjo's inner circle of business advisors. It's no coincidence that many products on Nigeria's import prohibition list are items in which Dangote has major interests. And that brings us to present-day Nigeria, where Dangote now has the Dangote Petroleum Refinery, a $20 billion mega project that was supposed to solve Nigeria's fuel crisis. Now, to give you a backstory of what this is really about, Nigeria is one of the world's biggest oil producers, but the country imports most of its fuel because, in short, the refineries don't work. Dangote saw this as an opportunity again, and he built the largest refinery in Africa to reduce fuel imports and, of course, dominate another essential industry. Now, the refinery faced multiple delays, rising costs, and even accusations that the government had given Dangote too much support, including access to forex at favorable rates while other businesses struggled. The refinery is said to be a game changer, but at what cost? Did Dangote take on this massive project purely for business, or did he know that the government backing would make it a guaranteed win? So when you think about the story of Dangote, how did he really make his wealth? Was it hard work or was it system advantage? Did the Nigerian system, political connections, and government policies help him more than the average entrepreneur? Some people call it brilliant strategy, others call it an unfair advantage. But what do you think? Let's continue the conversation in the comments. But before you go, don't forget to like this video, share it, and subscribe to Odd Nigeria. See you in the next one.